Not a lot of surprises left in the Southern Hemisphere as the top keeps getting stronger and the weak just keep fighting for the bottom 8. Let's get into it.
I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get a no call and quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard it gets.
Tuccizola, back to Baker, Baker with the fit. Kurt Baker in for DC, and this may well do it old glory with the try. The New Zealand Sevens legend, Kurt Baker with the cherry on top.
Can you believe it?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the On the Line Rugby Podcast, a show brought to you by the Believe Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Nagaishi, and welcome back. As I said in the cold open, a lot of expected dubs, very clinical this week, but a lot of shortcomings by the opponents. So let's break it down, and we'll start off this week with the wonderful Canes versus the Waratahs, who I really thought would have kept it a little tighter than what they did, but instead they got the brakes beaten off them by the Canes. I think they just unfortunately started to look lost just to the Canes' interplay between the forwards and backs. I thought that was the crowning achievement of this game. We'll talk about it in a little bit later, but basically, if you're looking at it, the Canes are an explosive team across the board, but they've never been able to put it together like this. And this is the game where I was like, wow, this was something that needs to be done the rest of this year, because if they can keep translating this, it's over for every team in Super Rugby Aotearoa easily. On top of that, scrum dominance, I think a lot of it was done by lack of leverage. They kept going a little higher than what they were supposed to. Bodies weren't level. You could see it at every scrum. And unfortunately, the Canes, being as clinical as they are, just came in and handled business. And I wasn't very surprised at that. I think what I was surprised about was Brett Cameron finally coming into his own. I loved seeing him be a little bit more fearless in the attack, probing the line, breaking the line, beating defenders, and just letting the chunks manage the game. That's how it's supposed to be, really. If you look at a clinical game, you're going to have your forwards, maybe manage majority of the space, kind of keep the tempo of the game going. And with the speed that they were rolling out of there with TJ Perenara and friends, it really showed. Just line speed on attack and on defense. The Canes were phenomenal. Obviously going back to the single shoot cover defense that I keep talking about, I think it's going to be the biggest thing for them moving forward outside of their interplay, just because of the fact that it seems to stop everybody. And I think more teams are going to try to look into this and start using it themselves. The Blues kind of did it. I mean, not really to the greatest effect this week, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Back to Brett Cameron. As for Cameron, as most of you who have watched the show or listened to the show have known, I considered him more of a game manager. I consider Aiden Morgan not it. And I wanted Ruben Love at 10 and my homeboy McDowell at 15. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened yet. But we've seen flashes when they were on the field. But if you're looking at how Cameron has evolved throughout this year, okay, look, off the tee, he wasn't exactly the greatest. I want to say he was above 50, in between the 50s and 60s. So about 2/3 made roughly. So he came in with a 73, kick off the tee percentage, which is not bad. It's pretty good. But I think that'll definitely kill him down into like the 60s, mid to low 60s after that performance. Wasn't really the greatest, but in terms of where I wanted him to really show off, he really did. As I've said earlier, just probing the line. I think he was a lot more passive throughout the most of this year, and I think he came into his own in this game. I think obviously perhaps, it doesn't help that the Waratahs had a very passive defense. They kept letting the Canes come to them and dictate the pace of the game, which is what you never want to do in any contact sport. You want to be able to set the tone and throw them off their game. And unfortunately, they just kept doing it in droves. Slide cover and communication from the Taz seems to be still a sore point of opportunity. If you're looking at the rest of this team, it's okay on the Taz, but I think they need to take a long look in the mirror, not only personnel wise, but also in staff decision making, making the lineups to really say, hey, we need DC out of that GM position. We need him back in coaching, because they, unfortunately, as of late, have not been looking the greatest as I want to. Don't get me wrong. You had Will Harrison back in at 10. I think that was a good choice to start it off, to give a little change of pace. Obviously, give Tane Edmond a little bit of rest. He is probably the only saving grace on this team outside of Dylan Page. Just looking at how this team plays, it was a lot different under Harrison. They played a lot more management of the field with kick tennis. They were a lot more frenetic in terms of flat ball choices moving through. Harrison did probe a little bit, not as much as Edmond normally does, though. Obviously, Harrison's speed is a big centerpiece of that. And the Canes, that would have been a good opportunity to showcase that. But the Canes defense is just so good. So, I can't really knock them for that. I think what I can knock them for is the fact that Dylan Page was the only real guy actually doing work. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. Mark Nawani Tawase, you actually pretty okay this week. You didn't make a lot of business decisions. You actually probed the line. You led defense and attack, and you helped get a good couple stops. I can't knock you for that. But what I can knock you for is the fact that you let Dylan Page, an old man, relatively to you, do what he did, and you couldn't match it. I think that's sad. Dylan Page continues to be the model, in my opinion, in terms of forwards playing at 11. Whether it's you're looking at defense, bomba hits, breakdowns, going for turnovers, running great support lines, running effective dummy lines, not asking for the ball, being very selfless in your play. And when you are called, specifically on those high ball kicks from Harrison, you make money. And unfortunately, of those 3 kicks, none of them really were successful until, I think, 1. But those points could have easily saved them a bonus point loss and possibly kept them more in the game. Their confidence just looked shattered by about majority of the, I want to say like the 45th to 48th minute. Obviously in the first half, they were pretty broken, but they had hope, and then it fell. But just with that game, again, as I've said in the cold open, very clinical win. I expected no less. I think a lot of this team of the week was originally Canes players. And then I had to, obviously, as we go through the list, you'll see what I mean, move down players and keep them in. But a little spoiler, honorable mentions for those who did not make my 23. We're going to start off with Billy Proctor and obviously Riley Higgins. Their support line play was immense. Their ability to interplay with the forwards, great. And on top of that, they kept probing and moving the game line past what they were supposed to for their size. Very impressed by that. I think that can't be overstated in terms of a back. To be able to do that at your size and be able to play almost like a forward, almost like a Dylan Page, but not really. Should be commended and should be lauded. So your honorable mention because you got bumped off this list. But as we move a little north up to Auckland, the Blues are still playing in Australia. They just finished their tour. They're now going to be on a 3-1 home to away ratio. I think if they can win at least 2 of these games, 2 of the 4, they'll be on hard momentum. They're coming off a great Australian tour, and I think they're ready to start showing house. Vern Cotter's really blowing up a lot of the lineup choices, bringing in new experimental options, and obviously allowing his players to play a little bit more through the forwards, which is something I wasn't expecting out of a Vern Cotter, who is notorious for just letting the backs play. I'm very, very surprised, and I hope the Blues can at least, I'm not going to say beat the Canes because I'm rooting for the Canes this year to take the title, but at least stay competitive, at least to get into a semifinal spot. So as for their play versus the Rebels, I think the Rebs just played too frantic. I think from the first, 5 minutes onward, you could easily see where this game was going. Inaccurate passes, lackluster line speed on offense and defense, throwing balls to nowhere. I think that was the biggest thing for me in terms of where this team was going. Whether it was Carter Gordon, throwing balls into nowhere, Ryan Lawrence, who unfortunately didn't look that great outside of a couple offensive plays that led him to get fantasy points for me. Really, it wasn't there. I think the line speed was the biggest killer. Everyone looked slow. Taniela Tupou looked like a 40-year-old man catching a pass, not having that explosive first step that he normally does to get through contact, constantly getting stopped on the first line. Rapid offloads to nowhere. Just keep the ball going, move down the line. That set up a lot of opportunities for this Blues team, specifically under Mark Talea, to get good speed and good points on the board. What are you doing? Come on now. This Blues team is too clinical for you to be throwing out YOLO passes every 10 seconds. When you're looking at Taniela Tupou, he didn't look okay. Scrums did not look the greatest against the Blues. I expected Tupou to at least show off some modicum of his ability to be what we all know him to be, being that stalwart in the 3 jersey. Obviously, you're not going to get a full 80 out of him. You're probably going to get a good 40 to 50 tops. I mean, if you're lucky, you'll get like 58 to 60, but ideally he's a 40 to 50 minute player. But still, for that 40 or 50 minutes, he didn't look that great. I think a lot of people would like to disagree with me on this, but go back and look at the film. If you have Flow, obviously go back and watch the games or stream, pirate it, just watch. I don't know anything. VIP box, just to go watch how he plays. He normally has a very explosive first step. He didn't have it. He looked lackluster in the game line. And on defense, he looked like he was just grabbing at air. It was really depressing. I don't know if he was hurt, whether it was a lack of form. Maybe it was just energy loss. I don't know what they were doing in Rebels practice this week. Kevin Foote normally runs a physical team, but I think that's something to look into. If I haven't said it before, I think I'll say it today officially. I'm officially hitting the wash/panic button on Carter Gordon. I understand he was okay off the tee, which is my biggest thing for him this week. But when it comes to a 10, specifically a 10 that was as explosive as he was all of last year, and in the beginnings of this year, you're seeing it's confidence and management and IQ. Now, obviously, all 3 of those play together, but when you're not confident, you don't have the greatest IQ. And when you're not playing the greatest IQ, you can't manage a lot. So, Carter Gordon, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, looks a little broken this year. Whether it's because of the World Cup and I'm right about that or not, maybe Kevin Foote and Joe Schmidt can maybe eke out a little bit out of him. He's supposed to be the fly half of the future for Australia. At this rate, hell, it might be just Tane Edmund and JOC back in the lineup. But I think you're going to be losing a great talent if you can't revive him. And with the way the Rebs are looking, at least on the political landscape, it's not looking so good. So he has to be marketable this season if he's going to move to another team and not ride the bench. I would love him to be an instant day 1 starter next year, regardless if he plays for the Rebs or not. But it all comes down to that. And if you can't fix that, I don't know what to tell you, just because when you're looking at that team, they run through Carter Gordon. And if Carter Gordon's not on, the rest of the team's not on. So, obviously, like I said, the 1A to that, Lukan Salakaya-Loto, but he's gone and for the rest of the year. And if the Rebs get folded, what are you going to do? So, being that as it may, we'll move on. I definitely think the stupidest thing that I saw was the try to AJ Lamb on the corner. It was, and Cole Forbes' beautiful offload, just beautiful. But outside of that, immense talent. When you're looking at this team, why would you roll your entire forward pack to the other side of the field and have them all guard the hash? Like, are we not going to talk about putting Taniela Tupou on Mark Talea and AJ Lamb one-on-one? Like, better decisions could have been made, guys. I don't know. What were we smoking that day? Did we, I don't know, drop the ball in terms of the team meeting at half? I can't really tell you. It was just not good. You need at least one back out there, at least a 12 or a 15, hopefully at least a 12. Mark Talea is a big boy. AJ Lamb is a big boy. You're going to need some muscle on that line with some wheels, and Taniela Tupou ain't going to do it for you. But being that as it may, let's move down a little bit south to Waikato for the Chiefs, who played a great game versus the Force. I don't have a lot of talking points about this. Spoiler alert, it's really just a clinical win by them across the board. I think the biggest thing to worry about, though, is the DMAC injury. He looked a little staggered for the first, I think it was in the first 10 and 20 minutes. He didn't come off the field, play the whole game. Very admirable, but it's something to look into, and given his, spoiler alert, omission from the lineup for this week, I think it's something that maybe it's a concussion protocol. Perhaps it's just rest again. Who knows? But he didn't look good coming up. The biggest thing for me that I got out of this game, and you could see it again, like the Rebels within the first 5 minutes, the Force's ill discipline really screwed them up big time. Whether it was looking at breakdown penalties and illegal side entry, or not releasing the ball, or hell, even a bunch of offsides on the goal line. You can't be doing that, and that's how you get free meters and free points. And again, like the Blues, like the Canes, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile, and they took it all. I really think, as a player that I wasn't really looking into this year, I may have boofed this up. Okay, I probably should have been looking at Daniel Rona a little bit harder than a lot of people have been doing. Rona could honestly be the jack of all trades that sends the Chiefs over the line this year. In my personal opinion, this year, they have not looked the greatest in comparison to the last couple years when they faced the Satyrs down south in Christchurch. Excuse me. If you're looking at how this team plays normally, they play with a strong forward set piece. They're very explosive off the back row, and their back interplay is amazing. That's really what scores them the wins. And obviously, DMAC off the tee. But if you look at it this year, set piece could use some work. Not honestly great. I would give it a significant down in comparison to the last couple years where they've been the shining star, really, of forward play in New Zealand. If you're looking at the back line being back row being aggressive, excuse me, it's not good either. Obviously Callum Boshier is okay. Sammy Penny-Finau is a headhunter on D. That's great, but you're not going to see that same offensive juggernaut that you had with Sam Kane, Luke Jacobson, and friends balling out. Great interplay with the backs. Also, the back line relatively broken down. If you look at how Etienne Nana-Seturo has played, he's played okay. He's had his moments. He's not the same player, at least if you're looking at the fantasy standpoint, that he was 3 to 4 years ago, even 2 years ago, really. If you're looking at them without Sean Stevenson, entirely different team, just in terms of how they manage the space, explosiveness off a line break, etc. If you're looking at 14, Imoni in Ottawa, okay. He's scoring tries. If you take out that out of a fantasy standpoint, in my opinion, personally, Ottawa is still kind of, he's on the come up from his injury, so it's understandable, but a little bit slower. If you look at your 12 and 13, you got what? Romeka Porhimpe, he's okay. Quinn Tupaya, looking okay again, coming off an injury, so I will cut him some slack. But overall, in comparison, you have ALB, who's been a freak when he can, but obviously always gets hurt because his body's made of glass. So the rest of this team has been a hodgepodge of movement. Even at 9, Cortez Latima has been what? He's arguably at some points been some of the best plays on this team, but he gets rested a lot for Xavier Rowe and Tohirangis, which for whatever reason that may be, but whether it's rest or not, I don't know. He's one of the best explosive 9s and one of the best scoring 9s. I don't know why you were on the field as much, but and then you have the DMAC injury, which normally he's very healthy throughout the entirety of the year. But this year, for whatever reason, the injury bug has got him. The Chiefs may be cursed. Who knows? It's not a good time for them, and it'll probably get worse moving forward. If you look at how they play with him gone, it's just not a good time. But of all the players in this hodgepodge backline that have showed up and showed out, Daniel Rona has been there all year. Whether it's at 12, at 13, at 11, at 14, he has been a freak of nature, setting up tries, being explosive, being in the right spots, putting himself in the best place to succeed, I think is the biggest thing for the Chiefs. And obviously having him on the field helps out a lot, fills up a lot of the holes, and maybe not in the explosiveness department, but in the management department. And that helps out a lot for an injured DMAC. That helps out a lot for a Sean Stevenson, who's been on and off the pitch, whether it's for form or lack of trying. I'm not going to say floundering is the right word, but at least in terms of how they've played, not up to snuff. And Rona has probably been the one guy that you can plug and play really anywhere outside of 9 in that lineup. I mean, maybe you could put him at line. I can't really say, but he balls. They put him at 15 at one point. He balled. So all things considered, look at him as your bright spot for this year, boys. It could be worse. As we move a little bit east into Fiji, the Drua play the Brumbies. Obviously the Brumbies played with a lot of confidence with the skip back. Having Alan Alatoa back was immense for them. Whether it's at scrum time, they played, okay, but obviously the Drua have a way better team at scrum time, and they got bullied across the park. Really, the breaks were beaten off them at all points at set piece. I think that was the biggest thing that I took away from this game. But with the skip back, they played very effective, and when they had opportunities, they took it and they succeeded well. Len Ikitau, really props up to him. Spoiler, he made my team of the week this week. I could not stop hearing his name called and watching him run great support lines, help manage the space. Every try that the Brumbies scored in that first half was all because of Ikitau, either through him personally himself doing it, or him causing the break or the penalty, or really just anything at the breakdown. It was Ikitau. That was the only guy I could really see actually making an impact the entire game in that first half where they scored all their points. If you're looking at the second half, there was no real translation of opportunities by the Brumbies in opponent territory. They had a couple shots. They didn't take it. The Drua just continued to be clinical off a set piece, whether it was off of scrums, off of lineout interference. They're great. Their locks, if honestly, if I didn't have this much backs in my team of the week, spoiler alert, and the Blues didn't play as clinical as they did, they would be in here. Roti Osua, all those boys, they did great. And to be in that position against a clinical team like the Brumbies is very impressive. And I'm happy to say that they could have had it easily. And I would love to see them in the playoffs. I think they'll make a great top opponent if they continue to keep playing this way. As for the Satyrs, I really don't understand how you woof this up so badly against the Reds. I had you guys penciled to beat them, and you guys let me down. Obviously, they dodged a huge bullet by not losing Scott Barrett. That, if you want to watch the highlights, find the extended ones on the Satyrs, they have it on there. Or watch the full game on Flow or pirate it, whatever is your pleasure. But that dump and then knee to the head by Scott Barrett did not look pretty. Yes, he lasted an extra 4 minutes, but it wasn't a great 4 minutes. And just as not even kind of from the fantasy point, because he left early, but in terms of a team regard, having him on the field as a skip for the Satyrs is huge, and losing him for the year, just like Bowden at one point, would not have been a great thing for them. It's nice to see him back in the starting lineup for this week. The biggest thing I think I took out of this match, well, two biggest things really, is why did Rob Penny not think of putting David Havili at 10? It's not like he wasn't a 10 and a 15 before he moved to 12, because he was, for all those who don't know. But why would you put all these no-name clowns outside of Revez Rehana in this lineup? I don't get it. Why? The team flowed much better with him at 10. If you're looking at whether it's management of space, playing off of kicks, defensively, not really off the tee, because Havili didn't really kick for whatever reason this week, but they were a much better gelling team, especially with Hotham at 9. I think he's way better than Willie Hines at this rate. The last couple weeks he's played, he's been outstanding. Props up to him. The physicality of the Satyrs, I think, really wore down the Reds early, and especially at pace. They looked in the first half really gassed, especially off that maul try, that they just couldn't stop them. Whether it was that really hard run that off of Havili, off of that maul, that really showed off his ability, that I think was kind of like the Jordy Nelson of rugby. He's not the fastest, he's not the strongest, but he is definitely one of the most shiftiest players, and he just gets the job done. Or it's Dallas McLeod scoring, a small back, and you're letting him dive over the line like that. Lack of urgency, lack of pace, and that's the biggest thing. Obviously at scrums, they got the breaks beaten off of them. It was bad, just across the park bad. I think the match obviously came down to who kept the lead and who made inroads in opposing territory. And when you're looking at the Satyrs, don't get me wrong, very explosive team. I think the majority of the plays, the big busting runs, were outside of Jock Campbell's plays, really exclusively where the Satyrs, either through Severis, Johnny McNichol. Let's see who else. Dallas McLeod. The list can go on and on. But obviously, they could not translate those opportunities into points, and it didn't translate at all into a win, and it showed. So let's move on to my team of the week this week. Obviously, as I've said, just for sake of impact being on the field in all intents and purposes. Alan Alatoa, you deserve to be in here. Ricky Riccatelli is my number 2 for this week for the Blues. He's been effective. He's been in form. The ability to not only run the Blues lineup effectively, but also to look vintage, like 2018 vintage from the Canes. Very impressed by that. He's really coming into his own, and I think Kurt Eklund's job is officially on notice. I think he may be gone after this year. So props off to Ricky Riccatelli for finding a real home with someone who's going to develop him. Vern Cotter's doing a great job with him in terms of developing him and his management of space. My 3 position, I have Tyro Lomax, who was the star for the Canes at scrum and lineout time with Xavier Numia coming off the bench. I was really impressed with him and his ability to bully that team across the park. In the 4 and 5 jerseys, I got Patrick Tuipulotu and Lachlan McWonnell, just because not only did they score, but if you look at it, they were the guys that dominated every lineout. They were in every breakdown, ran great support lines, and dominated across the park. I can't forget them. In 6 and 7, same thing with the Blues. I have Segner and Papali'i. Same reasons. They did their job. They did it well. Ran great support lines. Very unselfish play. Effective. Now, at 8, this is where we break. I have Braden Iose all day, every day. Now, if you take out the try-scoring opportunities, which are amazing for Iose, if you look at how he's been playing the last few weeks, he's been an absolute unit when it comes to scrums, lineouts, and especially with defense. I love watching him play. He looks back into form again in terms of last year. In fact, maybe a little better. I would put him easily in there all day, every day. As for my 9 and 10 jersey, I have Taufa Funaki from the Blues, just for doing a great job of managing his space, choosing quick ball, very accurate passes, and on top of that, great kicking off the box. Great job. 10, I have Brett Cameron, just for the reasons I said above. And then we move on to my back 3. I have Tim Ryan, just for the fact that he's a unit and can run around the park and do all kinds of amazing things on top of scoring. Obviously having in 5 tries, in 2 appearances is impressive. And so you can't really forget him there. He's done everything that the Reds have asked him for and more. Like at 14, Mark Talea had to have been there. Watch the film. His performance against that really, really debilitated Taz team was amazing and needs to be shown more love across the park. 15 would have been Ruben Love, but unfortunately I had to move him down. It has to be Ratavuki Nitkins from the Landers, just doing a great job, not only setting up space, scoring explosive tries, obviously, but not only that, running amok. His ability to probe the line and get more people the ball and keep the entire team of the Landers fed is an impressive thing. That's a very selfless play. He's not calling for the ball. He's not getting a lot of penalties, which I do like. He's starting to limit those. I hope that continues, because off of him, if they continue to develop, the Blues are going to feel sad for cutting him. And I think it's going to show if it hasn't already. As for my bench, I have a 4-4 split. Masake Doge and Jeff Tamuga Allen are my 2 front rowers. Doge, just because he bullied the Brumbies across the park at scrum and lineout. And on defense, impressive. Attack, he's a prop. He's a big boy. I'll let that slide. Jeff Tamuga Allen, if you take out the score, great at scrum time, great on defense. All I really needed him to do. As for 18 and 19, I went with a 2 back row split versus having a lock in there. I went with Harry Wilson and Rob Leota for simple reasons. They did their job. They did their job well. Any job that you consider for a loose forward, they did it and did it well. Regardless of their losing effort, at least in Rob Leota's case, he did it and did it with a lot of leadership. He took a lot of the L's, a lot of big hits, and stomached a lot of it just to keep the boys moving and keep them confident. And I know they didn't win, but could have been worse. As for my back line, off the bench, I have Harrison Goddard, former teammate. He did great, well, in every department, really. Accurate passes, very quick ball, kept the Drua just off pace for a majority of the game when he was on offense. Pick and go sniping did okay, but the kicking and space management to help with Lolesio's balance of attack really did help a lot. Dylan Page, couldn't leave him out. Andrew Kellaway, really the same reason as Dylan Page. Really the only guy that really helped seal a lot of the attack deficiencies on that team. I think they did a great job. Ruben Love, had to just put him in there just because Ruben Love's a freak. I think he shows up every day, day in and day out. As for my last bit of news, it's something to think about. This, I don't have any talking points, so it's a little unscripted, but here we go. The Rebels are facing liquidation, and Rugby Australia board has not been ousted, nor have they decided to give any support. Now, I do understand that Rugby Australia is in debt, but if you look at what the Rebels have done in court, they've done a great job of showing the favoritism across the board of Rugby Australia towards their other clubs and not giving a lot of disclosures as to revenue sharing. I hope they win their lawsuit. I hope this doesn't get liquidated until they win their lawsuit. I think they have a good chance of doing so, but it's not a good time. And obviously, a lot of people in Australia are not looking at Union as the future of the game. I hope someone in Melbourne or anywhere really, hell, I don't care if it's a New Zealand team really investing in them. Anybody, save this team. I consider them to be, whether a lot of fans say, oh, bye-bye Rebels, save the Warthogs, or whatever. I think people need to see that the Rebels have been a great team throughout the history of Super Rugby, and they need to be kept in some form. I don't think that they need to be relegated to minor leagues or soft, whether I don't know what the NPC is in Australia or if there even is one, but not to that level. They need to be kept at the professional level. Plenty of people are passionate on there. Kevin Foot's a great coach. Carter Gordon can be a great player. It's not going to look good when having them liquidated out to other teams, and it'll stretch their budgets for those cash-strapped teams, cough, cough, Waratahs, even more, cough, cough, Force. I don't know what you want me to say. Just get it done, please. Somebody step in. World Rugby, step in. This has gone too far. Sanzar needs to do something too. People are sitting too much on the sidelines, and it's allowing these kinds of things to happen over and over and over again, and it has to be avoided. But that's going to be it for me, guys, this week. Think about it. Look up some news on that. Read. Make your own decisions. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Peace.